Hi everyone, it's Mandy Gibbons and I'm here with Bob Berg, and I'm incredibly excited. As you guys know, you've probably seen on my social media that I'm a huge fan of the Go Giver series. So for over 30 years, Bob has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their business growth. And Bob is best known for his sales classic Endless Referrals and his business parable, The Go-Givers, yay, that he co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. And that's like how I first discovered Bob, by his books, the Go-Giver series. And the Go-Giver itself has sold more than 1 million copies and has been translated into 30 languages. And it was rated 10 on Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written. And I would add inspiring as well to that. And Bob is the founder of the Go Giver Community Network, an incredible online business community created by and for Go Givers. And he is also an animal fanatic and has served on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. So welcome, Bob. Yay!
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mandy. It's just such a pleasure to be with you. We've been now friends on social media for what, about 3 weeks or a month or something, and it's been a joy getting to know you. And I'm glad to get to meet you. Well, not in person, I guess, but kind of in person, with a real conversation. But you've just been a joy to get to know. You are so inspiring and uplifting, and I just love the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me, big time. I value that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to get stuck into some questions here, everyone, because I've already warned Bob that I'm super excited and I probably won't be able to wipe the smile off my face. So because he's on. So and my podcasts are normally super conversational, but I've got some questions that I would specifically personally love to ask you, and so I'm going to go for them first. So Bob, your insights into giving, like they resonate with me, obviously, like big time, like they're very soul warming, right? And open and heart based. And like it's such a beautiful way to live and to do business as well. And so does that come from like an intuitive place, like within you?
Uh yeah, I mean, I think to a certain point it does. I don't know how much of that is just me or my upbringing, because I was raised by two wonderful parents who, they lived their lives and conducted business that way. It's the go giver isn't a term that was used, but that's what I always saw.
Yeah.
So I think I just kind of grew up with that, and so it came more naturally to me. Of course, as I got into business, I saw people doing things in ways that were not always like that, and you get to see patterns after a while, because especially here in the States, they make, and I don't know how it is where you are, but where I am, they kind of vilify people who are successful, and it's almost like they're always portrayed as mean and nasty and horrible
Yes.
people and everything. And the people I noticed that were sustainably successful people seem to be nice people who not all, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying all. It's a big world. There's lots of people who do things in different ways. But what I always saw was basically those who made the most money seemed to provide the most value to people, and they seem to have a way of really from their heart wanting to give value to others. So I kind of questioned a lot of what I saw, right, in terms of TV and movies and all the kind of stories that when I questioned premises a lot. I said, well, why do people think that way? Why is that how people are portrayed? So I wanted to kind of look at the people who I saw as successful, again, sustainably successful, and not just financially, which is very important, it
Yeah.
certainly is, but also mentally, emotionally, relationally, socially. I wanted to kind of emulate those people, and those are the people who seem to be, what we would call go givers. It simply means they have a focus on bringing value to others.
Yes. And living a fuller life, right? In general.
Sure,
Mm.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And this is one thing that I loved about one of the many things I should say that I love about the Go Giver series, and that's
Oh,
um, you have a very and it's interesting talking to you now in person, right? So like, and hearing your voice, like, and your face kind of thing all at the same time. It's super cool. So you have a very like calm and confident like nature about you. Like it comes through in your presence and in the books as well. And so do you find that like operating from the 5 laws of like stratospheric success, I love that, by the way, helps ground and support you in that?
yeah, I believe so. And by the way, Stratospheric Success, my co-author, John David Mann, who was really he was the lead writer. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
how-to guy. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm actually kind of boring. John is a brilliant storyteller, so I want to make sure to give him credit for, just being so fantastic.
Yes.
But, I mean, I think, Mandy, it comes with a lot of things. One is age. I mean, I'm 64 years old. I've been through a lot. I've lived, kind of a long life so far. And I think one of the benefits of getting older is you get more confident in yourself. Fewer things bother you that maybe bothered you 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You kind of look at life with a lot more, I think, gratitude almost, the older you get. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of comes into it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of things, but, now as far as getting older, physically, not so great. That's not the fun part, right? There's lots of good parts about getting older. So far, I haven't found the physical parts to be as good. But sometimes, if you remember the movie, The Wizard of Oz, I feel like the Tin Man sometimes. It's like I can't move. I need an oil can. But but really, it's why when I speak with younger people, I say kind of put yourself in the older mindset a little bit earlier, and so that things don't bother you. That they probably, things that are probably bothering you now, what other people are thinking of you, because they're not. They're
Yeah.
probably not. They're thinking of themselves, right? And in different things. So yeah, I think a lot of that, and I appreciate you pointing it out, but I think a lot of that is just from just growing and getting older.
Yes, yeah, that makes notice even for myself, the older that I get, the less that things bother me that, probably would have bothered me when I was younger, absolutely for sure. And so you also come across as very resilient, right? And I know that that does come along with life experience, but um, and business experience as well for you, right? So how has like some of the more challenging experiences in your life like supported you with your like personal growth
Mhm.
and building your resilience? And is there sort of, one or two that you would be open to sharing on the podcast today?
Well, I mean, I think resilience is important because part of life is getting knocked down. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And we got to keep getting back. We have a choice: get back up or don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes it seems a little easier just not to at times, but we kind of know that's not the right decision. Um, Now sometimes, we have to take a little time, but pretty much, once you kind of give yourself a little time to, you know, now you got to go back into it. And resilience is also getting past the no's. It's when you're in sales, you get by the very nature of the thing, you get many more people telling you no than telling you yes. And I remember a great book by it was another business parable. It came out just I think a couple of years after The Go Giver, called "Go for No" by Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton, a husband and wife. And it kind of reframes the word no, right? Their premise is yes is the destination, no is how you get there. And they talk about actually going for no's, trying to get as many no's. Now, that doesn't mean you want the individuals to say no. It means you set a goal for how many no's you're going to get. Because in order to get so many no's, you have to make so many calls or see so many people. So it just reframes it. Now, the reason I bring this up is because that still doesn't mean you have to enjoy the no's or that you're probably going to enjoy the no's. Right. And so often, and I always say, but I wish I had their book when I was, 40 years younger, just starting in sales, because it's such a wonderful book. But, a lot of times when it comes to resilience, or when it comes to the times we get knocked down, or make mistakes or do things that sometimes within the personal development field, there's that attitude of, oh, it's all great, and feel good about it because you're going to learn a lesson, and this, well, probably will learn a lesson, and one day you will look back on it and maybe laugh, but right now, no, we don't like those things. They don't feel good at all. It doesn't feel good when someone says no. It doesn't feel good to get knocked down, and it doesn't feel good to make mistakes that we probably shouldn't have made. Yeah. And we don't have to pretend that it does, because I think that's kind of productive to pretend that it does. No, let's acknowledge it, and let's, let it kind of pass through us. Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment, and now his latest book, Living Untethered, which I think are three of the most amazing books ever written. I mean, anyone who has ever had a negative feeling about themselves, in their life ever, would do well to read those books and devour them, right? And that certainly includes me. Yeah. But what he talks about is, acknowledging, you live in truths, right? You acknowledge it, but then you kind of let it pass through you. You don't fight it, and you don't try to deny it. Just let it pass through you. But, it doesn't mean it. But I think that allows us to be resilient, right? When we don't have to fear it as much as understanding that, yes, it's part of life. Again, it doesn't mean we have to like it, but we accept that it's part of it.
Yeah. And then you're not fighting it, right? That's the cool part about it. I know when I was, I'm still on the tail end of recovering from brain and nervous system trauma, and for a while there, when I was trying to figure out how to rewire my mind and body to walk and talk properly again and all these things, it was like you beat yourself up, right? Because it feels like you're getting no's, right? Whether it's a no to yourself or whatever the situation is. And so being able to having that self-acceptance is a wonderful thing when it comes to personal growth and resilience, and just being kinder to yourself in general, right?
Well, and the fact that you've gone through this, and it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, I just admire you so much. And, I've read some of your story and have that, idea of what you've had to deal with. And you're a hero. I mean, it's just
oh, thank you. That's so nice. So, now I'm like, oh, you shook me. Thank you. That's so nice of you to say that.
Oh, that's true.
I read on your website that there was one gold nugget of advice from a drive-by mentor that totally shifted your perspective and played a big role in your success. And I was reading that, and I was trying to think through the books, like, did I hear it in the book? No, I'll just ask you.
So, yeah. And by the way, the term drive-by mentor was coined by someone who has been a great mentor of mine, although this is not the one who gave me that piece of advice, but her name is 𝗠𝗔 𝗚𝗏𝗀𝗧, and she's a leadership authority she speaks to leadership organizations, team building, does company mentorship all over the world. I mean, she's an amazing person. And we were talking about people who, come into our lives at just the most unexpected time and just happen to say that very thing that we need to hear at that moment, and that we're ready to hear at that moment, because the two aren't always the same.
That's right? True.
And so we call them drive-by, and I'm pretty sure she came up with the term and I just agreed with it, because that's usually how it is with 𝗠𝗔 and me. But I love that term drive-by mentor, because it means you may not have a relationship with them. You may know them just hi, how are you, or be in a conversation, or maybe never see them again, or whatever, right? But they just happen to say that and that's what happened here. And I'd been in sales for this is now probably 38 years ago, because I think I got in sales about 40 years ago, and it was a couple of years after I was in sales. And I had gone through I was going through a major sales slump. Yeah. And, being a young salesperson, I kind of did the opposite of what I should have done. Instead of focusing more on my customers and my prospective customers, I was focusing on myself and how terrible I felt being in the slump, and I've got to get out of the slump, and I need to get out of the slump. Well, nobody's going to buy from you because you need to get out of a slump.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. It's like no one's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, or
Yeah.
because you need the money, or even because you're a nice person. People are going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. So I was doing it all wrong. And I came back to the office one day after a missed sales opportunity, and I must have looked pretty depressed because this guy who worked at the company, and again, I really didn't know him well. He was an older guy. He wasn't even in the sales department. I think he was an engineer or something, and I think he retired soon after. But he was one of these people who he didn't say much, but he kind of had that wise way about him, And he said to me, Berg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Berg, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, please do. I said, I really need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others.
Yes.
And, Mandy, that's really when it hit me, I think, that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Okay. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service. As important as those are, that's never what it's about. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's about that person whose life you're trying to bring value to. And I guess maybe in essence, what we could really say is it's about another person's life being better just because you are part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that when we approach sales from that foundational premise, we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Yeah, that's it. And I know for myself, like I, over the years, had struggled with sales, approaching sales, because I'd been taught to just go hard at it, and it was like, and I was so uncomfortable doing that because it wasn't who I was as a person.
It wasn't congruent with your values.
No. And so, and this is one of the reasons, in particular that I love the Go Giver series, because, and why it resonates with me so much, right? Because like giving is such a wonderful feeling. And I also wanted to point out, obviously, that because this is something that you cover in the book as well, that giving doesn't mean that you're not receiving.
Well, no, the law number 5 is the law of receptivity.
Yeah.
Right. And, which says the key to effective giving. And, when we talk about giving, we're talking about providing value to others is really what it's all about. Right. It's that focus on that. You're focusing on providing value to other people. Now, law number 5, the law of receptivity, says the key to effective giving, is to stay open to receiving. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it means nothing more than understanding that, yes, you breathe out, but you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. It's both, right? You breathe out carbon dioxide, breathe in oxygen. Breathe out, which is giving, breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply 2 sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. Now, this is, again, despite the messages, the anti-prosperity messages that the world around us gives us, right? And so so the key is understanding it's not, are you a giver or a receiver? It's, you are a giver and a receiver. Now, what we know, though, is the giving must come first. This is universal law. It's laws of nature, laws of physical nature, right? We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap. It's not the other way around, right? We give before we receive. Pindar, the main mentor in the story, said to Joe, some people will approach a fireplace with the attitude of, first you give me some heat and some fire, then I'll throw on some logs and light a match. Well, life doesn't work that way. It's like going to a bank and wanting to open an account and saying, first give me an interest payment and then I'll make a deposit. Again, life doesn't work that way. And successful people deal in truths, right? And so, that's what we realize. But when you give great value to others, when you touch the lives of many people, which is law number 2, when you place their interests first, law number 3, not in a self-sacrificial way, not at all, but in a way that creates those wonderful relationships with people. When you come from your authentic core, which is law 4, now you've created what we call the benevolent context for your success. This is where prosperity in the form of money and or other ways prosperity can be measured comes to your life. Well, now you've got to be open to receiving it, and that can be difficult when the messages of the world make you feel like, well, if people with money were dishonest or did something wrong or blah, 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 and all these horrible messages that you see in every movie and TV show and social media and all that, right? So we need to that, which is why I believe it's very important to study prosperity.
Yes.
Make a study of prosperity. There's people who specialize in that, people like Randy Gage and Sharon Lechter and Ellen Rogan and Ken Honda, the late Bob Proctor, David Nagel. These people, they write, they post, they blog, they write books on it, they speak on it. These are people, I read their blogs and I listen to their, right? I read their books, I listen to their, because the horrible anti-prosperity messages come in from everywhere, right? We can't help but absorb some of it. So we need to proactively go out there and bring in those pro receptivity and pro prosperity messages.
That's true. And that just goes to prove, right, that it doesn't matter what your financial situation is, you can give and receive and provide value.
Yeah, we all have value to provide.
Yes.
We have it with in terms of excellence and consistency, attention, empathy, appreciation, being able to give a lending ear or a nice compliment. It's being able to work on someone's website, who you think, well, I can't add value to this person. They're like, well, you don't know, they may be totally a technophobe, right? And they hate it, but you can add some value to their life by doing that, right? And that's a great connection, and that starts a relationship. You just never know. There's all sorts of ways that you can, depending upon what your expertise is, or just the heart you bring to anything.
Yeah.
You never know, but there's always ways to add value to another human being. It doesn't take money to do that.
Yeah. And one question that I did want to ask you, because I knew, anyone watching this would probably be thinking this as well. Like with a lot of businesses, being online now, and people are connecting via Zoom and online in groups. And I know you're going to have great advice on this. How can people give value, and provide, value and influence, especially because I know they're, based around, like for me, I really love the Go Giver selling and the influence one as well. So, how can people be utilizing the Go Give Away in that when they're online?
Well, I often, and this is in the Go Giver itself, and it's been in all my writings for 30 years, I often say that the golden rule of business, of sales, is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
Not those computers they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
The computer is simply the medium that you
Yes.
use to create the relationships in this case. And so we basically do the same thing in terms of looking to give time, give attention, give counsel, give education, give empathy. When you see someone who has a post, and you can comment on that post, or you can share that post and with a comment. You can, you know what I'm saying? You can write a nice note to that person saying how much you enjoyed it and how much and why you appreciated it. You can connect people with other good people. You can find out from this person, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is someone who you'd like to connect with? There's all sorts of ways to communicate value to others. And then, of course, just creating content is a way of adding value. So there's all sorts of things that we can do online.
Yes, that's true. And I mean, I love giving value, and I love sharing content,
I
and
know you do.
that's even part of my podcast as well, because it's just
Mhm.
there's always opportunities for people. There's opportunities to be able to help people and support people, by doing that. And
Sure.
so, I've just one last question because I know we run a bit short on time, so I want to ask you, like, as like, because you do like the strength that you have, like, really shines through you, like, as a true, solid, honorable, resilient man. You're so genuine, and so as a man and as a leader, like, what are your thoughts on what resilience means to you as a man?
While there's of course differences in the sexes,
Yeah,
I think generally human beings are human beings.
yeah,
Human nature is human nature. It's those general psychological characteristics, feelings, and behavioral traits of humankind as ascribed to all humans.
yes,
And I think, Mandy, that we deal with hurts and pains and life's downs, in the way we deal with it, and we learn
yeah,
from others how to deal with it better. And we can read the Stoics from a couple thousand years ago and get wonderful advice on how they do it, or we can plug into content by Mandy and find out how she's done it, because you've certainly been through it and have
yeah,
so I think we learn from others. And I think whether we're men or women, I think it's a matter of you do your best to learn how to be resilient and how to succeed and how to do those things that are going to move you closer to happiness.
yeah. I agree with you, and it's very, even though sometimes with my coaching, if I'm between men and women, can be a little bit different. Um, uh, I still kind of go about it a lot in, I guess, in a very similar way, mate. And I'm not sure if that's just because of the type of people that want to coach with me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? In the
and
first
and
place. So
that
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean, and
yeah,
that could be, and maybe not. I mean, and there
yeah,
are differences, of course.
yeah, yeah,
Viva la difference. I'm
yeah,
glad there are.
yeah,
Um, and so, but I think it does go to
yeah,
the individual themselves,
yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of what they need and what they need from a coach. Uh, I just suspect that in many ways, as human beings, we're much more alike than not. And that's not just the sexes, but it's cultures.
it's true
It's
too. Yeah,
different, it's everybody. There are differences in all peoples, and those differences need to be acknowledged and respected. Yet I still can't help but feel we're much more alike than we are different, when it comes right down to it.
it's absolutely true. And when I talk to, um, uh, I guess, to men and women individually, and find, see their similarities when it comes to what they want out of building upon their own resilience. It's
Yeah.
always very, very similar when it comes down to, especially when it comes to their core values and what they want to offer others. And, when it comes to their relationships and everything else that they've, got happening in their life. So that's really cool. Thank you so much for answering that. I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. It's I don't often get asked that question, so it was good because it kind of took me by surprise and made me think.
Oh, that's well, for me, and this is why I love the Go Giver books as well, is because it includes strong women as well, right? And I sort of don't like to play the women against men thing. I'm not into that type of thing, but
Right.
I just but I love that there's wonderful examples of that. And as someone like myself, there has been times when people sort of like found it a bit weird that I coach men, but I just guess I see men as just incredible humans that need support just like anyone else, right?
I,
And
I've
so
seen
that's the
I've
way.
seen that in your
Yeah.
posts. I think you do a beautiful job of communicating that.
Oh, thank you.
I really, I've noticed that in your writings and in some of your posts. Absolutely.
Thank you. I value that big time. And so, would you mind if I ask you just before we wrap up, is there anything in particular that you would really, really love to, um, that's sort of popped into your mind during this conversation that you would really love to share, whether it's about resilience or even just about people moving forward in their lives at the moment, if they're like maybe wondering how they can implement the Go Giveaway a little bit more?
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to implementing the Go Giver way, it's taking the 5 principles and, just as Pindar advised Joe in the story, just beginning to apply them
Yes.
and take action to do so. Not worrying about doing it perfectly,
Yes.
because you don't have to worry about doing that, but just, finding ways to, just to think, how do I provide value to this person? It's asking yourself, before I post or tweet or pin or this, or see someone in person or say something or do something, is this likely to add value to this person's life? And we also have to think about how this person, how they see it as being a value, which is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user, right? It's all subjective.
Yes.
And so that's why it's important not to assume that what we would find of value is what they would find of value. That's why it's important to pay attention, ask questions, listen, and you know what I'm saying, so that we can
Yes.
add value as they want to be. And then, that do that for the first day, like Joe did. The next day, find ways to touch the lives of additional people. The next day, find a way to place someone else's interest first. Again, not in a self-sacrificial way, but in a way just like Joe in the story. He listened to Susan, his wife, when he wasn't in the habit of really listening.
That was
Like he,
good. That was
right.
really good. Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah.
And then, acting from a sense of authenticity. Now, by the way, I'll just say that, I believe, and I don't know if you experience it, in Australia, but in the States, authenticity is kind of now almost taken on the meaning of, well, there's no boundaries, just do or say whatever you want, and that's authentic. I think that's so wrong. That's like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot, and if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. When that's baloney. It simply means this person has an authentic problem that he needs to work on authentically in order to become a better, higher, authentic version of himself. So I don't buy into this authenticity means just say or do whatever I want. I define authenticity as acting congruently with your values. That's authenticity. And sometimes that means you don't say that thing that you necessarily want to say, because it's not appropriate, and that you know what I'm saying, and so
Yes.
forth. And then the 5th law about receptivity, it means practice receiving. It means if someone pays you a compliment, if usually you would say, oh, no, and instead you say, oh, thank you so much, or wow, that's very kind, thank you, and just allow yourself to receive. So, I would say that. And I think that taps right into resiliency. It's knowing there are things that, when it comes to being resilient, that we need to do, even if we don't feel like it, but take that first step and then build on your small successes. And those small successes, after a while, turn into a big success.
That's true. That's true. That's so good. That's something even I've had to learn, is taking compliments, because I remember for years people would offer me a compliment and then I'd sort of, without realizing that I was throwing it back in their face,
Mhm.
like, oh no, blah blah blah. That's because of this and stuff like that. And
Right.
yeah, they just say, just take it, Mandy. Just
I used
accept
to do the
it.
same. I used to do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on today. Like, I'm so rapt to have you on. And like for me, personally, like the Go Giver series is kind of like my go-to business and purpose Bible, so to speak. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much, big time. And there's not many books out there that sort of that I resonate with like so deeply. And so I'm just so incredibly grateful to you. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you too, my friend. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for just being like the super like standout, like soul-driven, awesome person that you are, you know, because you are just so generous. And yeah, and I value that you came on today. Like, it really means a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And it means a lot to me. I'm deeply honored, and it's just been wonderful spending this time with you. And I look forward to keeping our friendship going virtually on
Yay!
LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and wherever else we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll include all your like social media links and website links along with
Oh,
this episode. But is there any events or anything in particular that you'd like me to include in here?
yeah, just the burg.com, burg.com,
Yeah.
that site, and people can subscribe to that daily impact email that I send out.
Awesome. No worries. Well, thank you again so much, Paul, for coming on the show. And I'm so grateful and excited. And I can't express how much I appreciate you. So massive hugs.
Yep, absolutely. Big hug to you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, take care. Thank you again.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. See you later. Thank you for coming on, everybody.